If you see the mind is rehearsing what you will say or reviewing what you did say, you can think of the Three of Pentacles, because that's essentially what the card is depicting. This conversation relating to status, or how we're seen, how we're given praise or rejection, and moderation and limits. There's the hexagram we got, hexagram 60. And then you can go backwards, again, this reversed movement along the wheel, to think about what happened at the trial. What was the polarity that I was juggling, this infinite back and forth? And typically, if not always, it's the negative adaptive child fearing that you are going to assert too much control, that you don't have the power to break away or to dominate. And so it's very fearful, and that's playing out in the social realm. Or negative free child associated with Sphere 7 is believing that you have suppressed your power too long and there's an opportunity to dominate, or you have the speed to escape. And so the rehearsal, or the criticism of the rehearsal, or the review, or the criticism of the review, from the perspective of negative free child, Sphere 7, it could be to reject one that's offered by Sphere 8, negative adaptive child, or propose one, propose an escape plan, or propose a way of conquering. And again, you don't need to know all this or remember all this. It's simply to say that in the trial, if there is this polarity, if there is this tug of war between these two entities, and it could be Cartman Trauma Triangle and ignorant fixation, but we're just talking about Eric Byrne's transactional analysis with the negative adaptive child, negative free child. If there's that kind of tension, then it's going to play out in the return with the vision of how you can dominate, how you can escape, or how you must appease other people. And it could also be internal systems like the internal critic. It's all about rejection and praise with this card in this position, in my view. All of this, if we keep going counterclockwise, it all stems from not accepting confusion. Yes, we emerge from the Bardo with this gross body. I don't mean gross like disgusting, I mean gross, subtle, and causal, non-dual. We exist in time and space, separate. We don't remember where we came from. We can't conceptualize infinity or unity or existing without boundaries and direction. And most likely, at the former return, there was some kind of scenario that was pictured about your interactions with others, or your internal mind systems, or predicting how it could play out in the future. And if that's what was sent across the gap, even if you don't remember it, which often we don't because there's so many thoughts, and the Bardo is a blank period, a gap. But what is residual is that tension of I'm a person and I need to make something happen or prevent something from happening. That's kind of the operating system, unless we have accepted confusion at the call. It's pretty much inevitable. But if we accept confusion at the call, then we're open to truth, ironically, because that's the truth of the situation. We just don't know where we came from. We don't know why we're not there anymore. We don't know if we volunteered for this, and technically we couldn't have volunteered because volunteering implies others. There's the one who volunteers and the one they're volunteering with, the authority. We use those frameworks to help us ground it, just like he's having a thought, she's having a thought, but ultimately they are just stepping stones or half steps to a non-dual conceptualization, which again, it's not a concept, but that's the best that most of us can do until we're having an experience of non-duality. When you look at the first 4 pentacle cards, the first card is horizontal. It's a horizontal movement. The second card is a rotational movement. The third card is a vertical movement from the listeners up to the speaker and the speaker down to the listeners, and also up and down in terms of authority. And these are things that play out with pentacles. And then in the E4 of Pentacles, we see another rotational movement. So the first rotational movement we see in the trial with the Two of Pentacles is a figure eight, infinity, just to hammer it home that yes, there's this infinite motion happening. And you can imagine like a spaceship circling between two planets, or a planet and a star, and caught in that gravitational pull. That's kind of how we can be. Sometimes we're in the gravitational pull of one polarity, say negative adaptive child, sphere 8, and then we're in the gravitational pull of the other polarity, say negative free child, sphere 7. When we look to a higher authority, because we feel clustered in that gravitational pull, then we can transcend the manifestation of the infinite that is playing out with polarities to be infinite without moving. But at the return, if we're grasping and judging and full of regret, trying to pass a message over the gap, having our view of ourselves as authority, or fearing an authority, or welcoming an authority, as we see in the Three of Pentacles, then we're not going into the Bardo with humility, and we're not going in as a hunter and hunted. The attentiveness that is both predator and prey, just listening to see where the other one is. Doesn't matter if you think of yourself as the predator of the Bardo or the prey of the Bardo. You're both in neither. And then the fourth in the Bardo, we see a rotational but also a horizontal between the two polarities, and a vertical. It's encompassing all of those three manifestations of motion or relationship. The desire to know something, the desire to get something, the desire to have an image of being a certain way. These are all necessary for a person, for groups, and for systems. They're what propel us forward. But like the apple in Eden, they move us away from being present and being no one. As soon as there's a thought, I need to know this, or I think I know this, or if only I knew this, or I have this, or I shouldn't have this, or I need this. I'd be happier if I had this. I'd be happier if I could remove this or avoid this. Then there's suddenly a subject and an object. We can use that event as a reminder that we're in the return, that we're trying to pass something over the gap into the future, or comment on what's come before us in the trial. It's nothing wrong with it. It's all fine, but it's removing us from alignment with the Bardo. The Bardo is pure receptivity. And the correlate to that for us in this body, and these bodies, is our sensory nervous system. Both are pure yin, not motor planning, not expressing, listening. And so if there's planning, predicting, judging, grasping, regret, thinking about what you do know, what you need to know, what maybe you don't want to know, what you have, what you don't have, what you need to get, what you need to get rid of or avoid. All of that is yang, expressive. That's associated with the trial. That's associated with life on earth. Again, not saying that it's bad, but we can rewire ourselves a practice which may never come to fruition, but where it's an automatic habit, it may be something we have to cultivate over and over again, like farmer cultivates his crops, or someone who hunts goes after prey, or prey that escapes the hunter. These are processes that, on cycles of seasons, these are processes we see everywhere. Just repetition, over and over again. And that's the clustering of the Two of Pentacles. Just over and over again, seeing where we're lost in the mind, lost in the past, lost in the future, lost in the doing, lost in the planning, the judging, the regretting, the craving, judgments, fear of judgments, defensiveness. Whenever we see that, that's our cue to go into our sensory nervous system. What are our hands feeling? Where's the base of our spine? The breath, any kind of anchor. And just a moment, even half a moment, of just pure intake. No output. Because in the truth, there's only this moment, but those are just words until you're really seeing it. So, instead of going into lots of spiritual conversation and spiritual languaging, we're just saying it's a cycle, whether it's a figure eight or a circle, where you notice if you're in the doing mind, planning, predicting, judging, grasping, regretting, and that is your cue, as in Aurelius, the obstacle is the way, that is your cue to go into the sensory system. If you're in yang, you just go to yin. And as I said before, we see this in spiral dynamics with societies. When a society or an individual is at one of the yang stages, which is 1, 3, 5, 7, there is a push towards merging conquest, causing things to come to you because it lacks yin. And in the yin phases of spiral dynamics, whether it's a person or a society, 2, 4, 6, 8, which is teal, or turquoise, depending on which system, there is a group that already exists, and then there's a focus on keeping people in the group and excluding outsiders from the group. And both have their shadows. But the lesson for us, from moment to moment, is when you're yang, go to yin. Be receptive. We've associated hexagram 45, or it's associated itself, with the Two of Pentacles. And we spoke about that as clustering together, finished. But it also can relate to seeking advice from a higher person and keeping the group together. When there's polarization, whether it's inside of a person, inside of a group, inside of a society, even between man and nature, as if man isn't nature, the advice of a higher person, a higher entity. Now, internally, that's the ideal parent figure. That's the one that doesn't take sides with the negative adaptive child or negative free child. It's the one that says, yes, that story of victimhood, that plan of rescue, or that assignment of persecutor may have some truth, but let's go beyond the Cartman drama triangle. It's the one that says, hey, you're fixated on that Enneagram pattern again, but that's not you, that's just a pattern. Or that's another person doing those things. They're speaking as their negative adaptive child, negative free child, negative controlling parent, negative nurturing parent, Enneagram fixation, or they're on Cartman drama triangle, casting you in one of those roles. And that is what can keep a group together, consulting the higher authority. And what we're calling it right now is the ideal parent figure. Other people can call it higher self or God. And since everyone's idea about those things is different. For our purposes, we'll just look at it as God, higher self, is pure receptivity, not separate, not expressing, just there to receive. It's the ultimate yin principle. And once you're in the ultimate yin principle, then that polarity is encompassed. This is sphere 6, seeking to balance the individual impulse of sphere 7 and the groupthink or cultural conformity of sphere 8. It's sphere 6, seeking to balance purpose and limits. When we make war with polarity, or when we choose one polarity over another, the group fractures, we are clustered, we're finished. But when we go wider than the clustering, wider than the polarity, to encompass both polarities, we're embracing paradox, we're embracing subtlety, we're in beginner's mind, we're allowing ourselves to be confused. It all comes back over and over again to allowing confusion at the call. If that gift of the pentacles or any of the other suits is handed to you and it's taken as a rejection or as a need to have certainty from the prior message sent from the former cycle, the former return, then we're not going to be at peace. And so we're looking at the trial, we're looking backwards at the call and remembering that we didn't allow confusion, so that the return comes, we don't try to pass some message over the gap, some judging, grasping, planning, predicting, regret. Instead, we're just sending whatever sensory input. So we're essentially sending nothing. We're just attuning to whatever the senses are doing. And that is what is sent to the future self. That is what is sent over the Bardo. But it's not even sent over the Bardo, it's sent into the Bardo without any need for any message to be conveyed. We're just kind of dropping our shoulders, opening our hands, unclenching our fists, tearing up the letter we would have sent to just be here now.